It was February 2016. I was 23 at the time, living in the quiet expanse of northern New Mexico. That weekend, I had driven up alone to Boulder, Colorado, to visit a friend. The route was a familiar one I had traveled more than a few times. I felt secure, even with the long, empty stretches. The drive back was quiet. It was almost too quiet until I made a routine stop for gas in Alamosa, Colorado. This town was the last significant stop before home just over 90 miles of barren desert. Scattered ghost towns and forgotten highways lay ahead. It was just past 6 p.m. Twilight bleeding into night when I pulled out of the gas station and noticed a dark blue sedan roll out right behind me. I didn't think much of it until it clung to my rear bumper like a shadow dot. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But no matter what speed, I drove faster, slower. Erratic, the car stayed glued behind me. There were no other cars, no traffic, nothing but the hum of my tires on cracked pavement in that sedan. A chill crept up my spine. Maybe it was a cop waiting for me to slip up, but they never pulled me over. No lights, no siren. Silent, patient pursuit. Unnerved, I pulled into the next tiny roadside community and stopped beside a rundown convenience store, heart pounding. If it was law enforcement, they'd confront me, right? They pulled in behind me, but no one got out. I waited. Nothing. The air felt heavy, like something was watching me just beyond the veil of glass. I drove off, anxious and done surprisingly. Car followed. When I crossed into New Mexico, I knew in my gut this was no cop. The sun had vanished, leaving only shadows across the Taos Mesa, a place already drenched in strange stories and darker rumors. My phone, an outdated iPhone, was basically useless out here. No signal, no help. I was so distracted by the relentless tailgating that I missed the last dirt turnoff to my house. Panic rose like bile, but just ahead, I spotted a familiar scenic rest stop, well lit and often used by travelers. I pulled in, so did the sedan, but this time, something in me snapped. Maybe it was courage, maybe desperation. Either way, I marched over. The driver rolled down the window. A plain-looking, middle-aged woman sat behind the wheel, smiling nervously. Her mind couldn't process it. She apologized, said she thought my car belonged to her daughter. It made no sense, My license plate was from another state. My car littered with bumper stickers, There was no possible way to mistake my vehicle for someone else's. And if it was truly confusion, why follow me for nearly 90 miles? Why hadn't she just called her daughter? Why didn't she get out of the car when I stopped the first time? By a word of it, Told her off, and she apologized. I got almost too calmly. Back on the road, I made the turn onto my long, dead-end dirt road. To my horror, she turned in too. I stopped cold, got out, and screamed at her to leave. I told her there was no outlet, no way back to the highway. She apologized again, but didn't leave. When I got back into my car, she followed. My heart thundered, but I was close, so close to home. I knew my boyfriend was there, waiting. When I pulled into my driveway, so did she. This time, she stepped out of her car. She asked, no, pleaded to stay the night, said she was tired, said she needed shelter. I yelled at her to leave, screamed, until my throat hurt. Then my boyfriend stepped outside, drawn by the noise. The moment she saw him, her face changed. She bolted back into her car and sped off without another word. To this day, I don't know what she really wanted. Why she followed me for so long, or what would have happened if I had been alone. I'm in my 20s now, but this story still haunts me. It's happened when I was just 12 years old. Every year, my grandmother and I would set out on long road trips, either through our own country or sometimes the one just beyond our border. We lived close enough that crossing over was no big deal. That year, we decided to head into the neighboring country. My grandmother had an old friend who lived deep in the rural parts, someone she hadn't seen in years. After weeks of planning, they settled on a date, and we prepared for the trip. I was thrilled. I didn't care where we were going. Just the thought of hitting the road was enough to light me up. Fast forward a few months, and we were packed and driving. This was supposed to be about a week-long journey. My grandmother wanted to explore scenic spots along the way with the child. Like me in tow, pit stops were frequent. I wasn't a bad travel buddy, okay? Just cursed with a tiny bladder. We were on the last leg of the trip when the gas tank dropped to near empty. Pulled into a rundown gas station, the kind that exists in forgotten corners of nowhere. I had to pee bad. My grandmother filled the tank and we rushed inside. But the moment the door creaked open, something in my chest tightened. I didn't know why at first, but then I saw him, the clerk. He stood behind the counter, motionless, grinning. There was something horribly wrong about him. He wasn't disheveled or messy. He just had this look, cold, distant, off. The kind of face you imagine when someone says predator. His grin didn't fade, even when his eyes locked onto mine. I felt sick. My grandmother must have sensed it too. She approached cautiously, paid for the gas, and asked for the restroom key. He handed it over slowly, deliberately, ever breaking eye contact. She walked with me to the bathroom. The place reeked. The lights flickered overhead. I rushed, washed my hands without looking in the mirror, and we returned the key. That should have been the end of it. But as we got back in the car and pulled out, I caught a glimpse in the mirror. The man locked the door to the store in the middle of the day. Then he walked calmly to his own car and began driving behind us. At first, we assumed he was just heading the same direction. There weren't many roads out here after all. But after hours of the same headlights in our rearview mirror, my grandmother knew we were being followed. He didn't just tail us, he matched us. Turn for turn, stop for stop. For nearly 12 hours, he stayed behind us, never passing, never falling back. My grandmother, though shaken, refused to stop unless absolutely necessary. She didn't have a phone, and the route was unfamiliar. There was no chance she'd risk turning off to some random road to find a police station, not without knowing where she was. So we drove, through dusk, through night, through silence, and he followed. At long last, we reached the outskirts of the city where her friend lived. Familiar signs returned, civilization, and there, glowing like salvation, stood a small police station. My grandmother didn't hesitate. She turned in sharply and parked, and so did he. He pulled up beside us, engine still running, eyes watching us as we stepped out. His hands stayed on the steering wheel. That same smile carved across his face like a mask. We entered the station. I turned once to look through the glass. He was still there. Watching my grandmother, spoke quickly to the woman behind the desk. Moments later, 2 officers stepped outside. What happened next, I'll never forget. The man's grin cracked first, at the corners, then vanished completely as one of the officers tapped on his window. Whatever thrill he had been chasing died right there. He spoke to them, then drove away under their supervision. Quiet, controlled. We never learned who he was or what he wanted, but we never drove through that region again. In fact, that was one of the last road trips we ever took together, sadly. A couple of years ago, my husband and I went on a road trip to Yosemite National Park. Instead of camping inside, we booked a small hotel in a nearby, quiet town that felt oddly empty. One evening, while we were driving back from the valley, something unusual caught my eye. Our headlights briefly illuminated what looked like a body lying flat on the roadside. Both legs were stretched out, feet pointed toward the street. I froze and told my husband, "There's someone laying there." He brushed it off. "You probably saw a trash bag or something," but I wasn't uncertain. I was absolutely sure of what I saw, and for the rest of the ride back, I kept insisting. It was a weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. By the time we reached the hotel, I think something in my tone unsettled my husband. He looked at me, more serious now, and asked if I really wanted to go back. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I'm sure. I turned around and retraced the drive. Sure enough, the same figure lay there, motionless on the side of the cold, empty road. This time, we slowed down and pulled over. My husband rolled down the window and called out, "Are you okay?" No answer. Louder this time, "Are you okay?" Then, the woman sat up. She moved slowly, deliberately, dressed in all black, her long coat dusted with dirt, 3 half-empty water bottles beside her. Her hair and makeup were too neat, her expression too calm. She looked like she didn't belong to the Rodor, even the night. She said softly she was trying to reach a Chevron station up the road. She claimed her mother was supposed to meet her there, but the gas station was still 7 miles away, and we were in the middle of nowhere. She thought it was just a mile from her hotel, she explained, and had set off alone. Something didn't sit right with me. The math, the look in her eyes, the dark road behind her. We offered her a ride. She slid silently into the back seat, clutching her purse like it was the only thing anchoring her to this world. We asked gentle questions. She said she was just tired from walking and had decided to lie down. "I just gave up," she whispered. Her voice was brittle. It was winter. She had no gloves, no flashlight. When we finally reached the Chevron station, the store was closed, abandoned for the night. She stepped out and sat quietly on a metal bench. We offered to stay. She declined. "There's no cell service out here," I reminded her. Still, she smiled faintly and said she'd be fine. We drove off. But as we reached our hotel again, we noticed 2 police cars in the parking lot, vehicles that hadn't been there before. A chill crawled down my spine. I approached one of the officers and hesitantly asked, "Are you searching for a missing woman?" He nodded. "Why? Have you seen her?" I told him everything, that we picked her up, that something about the whole thing felt off. I asked him to go check on her at the Chevron station. He thanked us, but couldn't tell me what had happened, only that it was a good thing she left when she did. Later, I checked the local police log. My blood ran cold. A domestic violence incident had erupted at our very own hotel. The woman had been severely beaten badly enough that she'd fled without light or protection. Walking blindly down the road in the night, running on nothing but fear, she had gone to the front desk to call her mother. Her husband, the man who had hurt her, knew she was there. He was arrested not long after that stretch of road where she lay down. It wasn't random. It felt like the place where she thought she might die quietly, that if no one found her, she would just disappear in the dark. To this day, I wonder what became of her. Did her mother reach her in time? Did she go back to him? I hope not. I hope the cops got to her, okay? And I hope the shadows of that night never caught up with her again. When my daughter was just 2 years old, I was going through a particularly dark chapter in my life as a single mother, emotionally drained and desperate for escape. I decided on an impulsive road trip to the misty, isolated coastlines of California. I had booked a rustic cabin hidden deep in the woods with a narrow trail leading to a fog-covered beach before leaving. My stepfather pressed a loaded .38 revolver into my hand. "A precaution," he said. I tucked it under the driver's seat, hoping I'd never need it. After crossing San Francisco, the night turned eerily quiet. The highway was completely deserted, the darkness pressing against the windows. My daughter, unaware of the growing unease, slept soundly in her front seat car seat, as was legal back then. That's when I noticed a vehicle in my rearview mirror emerging from the void like a shadow. It sped past me, then slowed. Too much, too deliberately. It began pacing me, keeping side by side, the space between us unnaturally close. I tried speeding up. I slowed down, but the car stayed with me, like a predator tracking prey. I glanced over. Its interior light was on, and the man behind the wheel was wild-eyed, frantically motioning me to pull over. His face was twisted in something between urgency and madness. A shiver gripped me. Ty knew I couldn't stop, okay? I was low on gas, alone. My baby girl was still sleeping beside me. Still, I kept driving. He kept following the emptiness of the road. The complete lack of any other headlights began to feel surreal, like I had slipped into some other reality where it was just me, my daughter, and him. After what felt like hours, an exit, finally, appeared like a mirage in the darkness. An old gas station, buzzing under flickering lights, surrounded by nothing but black trees and silence. I turned off the highway, and he followed. I slowed near the gas station, my instinct screaming that it wasn't safe to stop. The station was lit, but dead, not a soul in sight. I passed it and drove deeper into the dark, dust-choked back roads, my heart pounding louder than the engine. Eventually, I veered off into a barren dirt clearing, headlights bouncing off gnarled trees. I drove far from the road, my nerves fraying with each second. I could feel something breaking inside me, fear giving way to rage. I slammed the brakes, reached under the seat, grabbed the revolver as he followed, and parked just behind me. I leaped out, locking the doors behind me, heart pounding, clenched in my shaking hand. I circled to the passenger side and waited, breath fogging in the cold night air. Hay stepped out of his car too fast, moving toward me with heavy intent. That's when I raised the gun. The moonlight caught the weapon's metal just right. He stopped, frozen. We stared at each other across the darkness. Not a word was said. He stood there for what felt like an eternity, calculating. And then he turned around, got back in his car, and vanished into the night without ever saying a word. My legs nearly gave out. The rest of the trip, I was shaken, hyper-alert, haunted by what could have happened. I never found out who he was or what his intentions were, but I know this: if I hadn't had that gun, we might not have made it to the cabin or back. This happened just a few weeks ago. I went on a road trip to drop a friend back home in Colorado. She originally wanted to fly, but I craved the isolation of the open road. I live in Ohio, so the drive would take us through Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Kansas to 22 hours, not counting stops. I had never driven that far before. I'd flown to Florida once or twice, but this was different. Something about it felt like I wouldn't get another chance. I ended up driving most of the way. I've always found peace in the hum of the wheels. My friend said she'd take over if I got tired by the 12th hour. The exhaustion started to feel heavier, like something was crawling under my skin. That's when things turned dark, and not just the sky. I needed gas, and the only station nearby was this decaying, half-dead stop just off the highway. The place was closed, completely silent, lit only by a flickering pump light and a single street lamp. The air was thick, like it was holding its breath. I got out, pumped the gas, and tried not to think about how wrong the place felt. It was an old-school pump. After selecting the fuel, you had to pull a rusty lever before the gas would even start flowing. I fumbled with it, fingers cold and jittery. Just as I figured it out, I heard a voice. It came from the shadows beside the building. A man's voice, distant but clear, like it had been waiting for the right moment. I don't remember what he said, something like "hey" or "over here." My blood froze for a second. I looked up, nothing there. Just shadows swallowing corners. I chalked it up to being tired. But deep down, I knew better. As the gas kept filling, I heard the voice again, closer this time, more certain, more deliberate. Maybe he thought I was alone. since my friend was sleeping with her seat fully reclined. I didn't want to stop mid-fill. I wanted to believe I was safe, but then a sharp whistle sliced through the stillness, like someone calling a dog. That's when it hit me, a sick, overwhelming wave of dread. I looked up again, and there he was. He stepped into the light, just enough, a brown coat, hood pulled low, red shorts, like something out of a bad dream. He stared at me like I was prey, then suddenly yelled, "Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you." His voice was ragged, loud enough to jolt my friend awake. She sat up straight and rolled down her window, eyes scanning the station. As soon as he noticed that I wasn't alone, he paused mid-stride, turned, and bolted into the darkness behind the building. A second later, I heard an engine roar to life, gravel scattering under spinning tires. He vanished without another word. I didn't get a good look at his vehicle. I couldn't move. My feet were like stone, heart hammering in my ears. We all imagine how we'd react in a situation like this. Pepper spray ready, keys between fingers, plan in mind. But the truth, I was paralyzed. My mind went blank. I was scared in a way I've never felt before. Thank God my friend stirred when she did. If she hadn't, I don't even want to finish that thought. After the gas finished pumping, she took over driving. I tried to sleep, but even with my eyes closed, I could still hear that voice, could still feel those eyes on me. I don't know what that man wanted, why he yelled, why he was creeping in the dark. But I know one thing for sure, I never want to experience something like that again.